So what happens when a big, hyped-up event in a virtual world just completely misses the mark? Well, today we're doing something like a community autopsy on one of those events, using the raw, unfiltered feedback from the players themselves to figure out how Mayhem turned into just meh. And our whole investigation kicks off, as these things so often do, with one single, simple question.
It all started right here, with this question posted on a fan forum for the long-running sci-fi game Entropia universe. A user just wanted to get some feedback together for the developers before the next big event rolled around. And the answer they got back wasn't just a simple yes or no. It was a collective digital roar from the community. And wow, the results, they really paint a picture, don't they? A staggering 87% of players who voted gave the event a massive thumbs down. That's not a mixed review, that's a landslide. So the real question here isn't if players disliked the event, but why the reaction was so incredibly negative. To get to the bottom of that, we're going straight to the source, the players' own words. We're going to break down the big themes from this forum thread to really understand the anatomy of a failed virtual event. And let me tell you, the feedback was raw, it was honest, and it was super revealing. I mean, you just can't get more direct than that, right? This quote from a user named Messi91 cuts right to the heart of it. There's no fluff, no nuance, just pure, unfiltered disappointment. And this really sets the stage for the mountain of feedback that came pouring in after it. But then you get this quote, which honestly might be even worse. It's one thing if your event is bad, that's a problem, but it's a whole other level of failure when it's so unengaging, so poorly promoted that some players didn't even know what was happening. This wasn't just a failure in how the event was made, it was a failure in just letting people know what existed. And that right there brings us to the first huge problem the community had, the event's economics. Now, to really get why this was such a big deal, you first need to understand something pretty unique about this particular game's economy. Okay, so Entropia Universe runs on what's called a real cash economy. The in-game money, the PED, has a fixed exchange rate to the US dollar. This means that when players are spending their time and their PED in the game, they are spending real, tangible value. And trust me, that changes everything. So here's where it all comes together. And this user summed it up perfectly. If you're going to ask players to invest real time and real money, there has to be at least a chance for a real return. Players felt like the Halloween event was just designed to be a PED sink, basically a money pit, a guaranteed loss with zero potential for profit, which in a game like this just feels fundamentally broken. And look, we're not talking about small amounts here. One player actually reported being down 2,000 PED just from participating. At a 10-to-1 exchange rate, that's a real-world $200 loss just for trying to enjoy a holiday event. When you see numbers like that, you really start to get why people were so frustrated. And then, to pour salt on the wound, the rewards that Deed managed to drop felt like an insult. Imagine spending thousands of PUD, hoping for some awesome rare gear, and instead you get cosmetic makeup? In this kind of economy, that doesn't feel like a fun little prize. It felt, as they put it, like a total slap in the face. But you know what? This wasn't just about the money. Not at all. Players were pretty clear that even if the event had been profitable, it still would have failed on a much more basic level. It just wasn't fun. This slide just lays out the massive disconnect. Players expected this cool, immersive Halloween vibe, but they got a weird open-world setup that just created tension. They wanted unique monsters, but got, and I'm quoting here, samey-looking mutants. And as for those valuable rewards, well, we know how that ended. The infamous slap in the face. The gap between what was expected and what was delivered was just huge. This quote really gets to the heart of the perceived lack of effort. It felt like the developers just copied and pasted some of the oldest, ugliest, lowest quality enemies and dropped them into the event. It kind of sent a message to the community that this wasn't some special celebration, but just a lazy, low-effort content dump. And it didn't stop there. On top of all that, players were saying there were no clear missions, the enemies were bugging out all over the place, there was just no compelling reason to even be there. The whole thing turned into a mindless, tedious grind. The core gameplay loop, the very part that's supposed to be fun, was totally broken. So when an event fails on money and on fun, what do you think happens? Well, players start to walk away. They vote with the most powerful thing they have, their time. Or to put it another way, they started voting with their logins. And you can actually see this happening in stages right in the forum thread. First, stage 1, people just ignored the event. They just didn't bother. Then came stage 2, which is even more worrying. They stopped caring enough to even give feedback. They just couldn't be arsed, as one person put it. And then, the final step. They just left. They logged out and fired up other games. I mean, this quote right here has got to be devastating for any game developer to read. You have a player right here saying they are ready and willing to spend thousands of PED, we're talking real-world thousands of dollars, but the game's event was so uninspired that they chose to spend their time and their money on the competition instead. Ouch. But okay, here's the interesting part. Despite all that negativity, this forum thread wasn't just people yelling into the void. It actually turned into a massive brainstorming session. The players, the ones who clearly still care about this game's future, started putting together their very own blueprint for how to fix things. And here it is. This is basically their roadmap. They suggested a whole new reward system with Mayhem 2.0 tokens to fix the broken economy. They want the return of clear missions with small, satisfying rewards along the way. They propose systems for upgrading their own gear, adding unique items to hunt for, and really just giving them compelling long-term goals to strive for again. So as we start to wrap this up, it becomes pretty clear that this whole thing is about way more than just one bad holiday event in one video game. This is a case study, and it has some really big lessons for everyone. What this one little forum thread really shows us is just how fragile the trust is between a game's creator and its dedicated community. Especially, and I mean especially, in a game with real money on the line. Players are making a real investment, and they need to feel like their time, their money, and their passion are actually being respected. And this user just nails it. Games are built on this loop of effort and reward, right? The carrots, the incentives, that's what keeps us all playing. And when you take those away, you don't just break an event. You risk breaking the entire reason people play your game in the first place. And that leaves us with the really critical question, especially for this new era of gaming we're in. When these virtual worlds have real stakes with real money flying around, what is the true, tangible cost of losing the fun?